Okay, it's 12 o'clock, so we are going to get started. My name is Mary Pat O'Neill, and I am an independent college counselor in Redmond. I volunteer my services with the Lake Washington Schools Foundation and created the Find Your Fit program back about 2016, I think it's been now. And I do this because it's my way of giving back to the community. I happen to be somebody who would be known as a first generation. My parents didn't go to college, and I understand the importance of education. And as a college counselor, quite frankly, it bothers me to see that students with the most money seem to get the most benefit of everything. And so this is my way of trying to level the playing field as much as possible. So this is a 3-part series that we're doing this week. I did this back in June in person, and I have to say I so much enjoy in person than looking at my face on a Zoom call. But hopefully we will interact and engage, and I'll be taking questions at the end. I am doing this by myself, so I am not one of those people who can multitask and read questions and read slides at the same time. So just know that there's a lot of information today. The weather has changed. It's a little cool outside. The rain, which is reminding us about fall, which is when a lot of college applications will be coming. So I hope that through this boot camp, you end up feeling less stressed, less anxious about the process, because I always want families to understand that this is not rocket science, and no one has to work with a college counselor and all that type of stuff. So let's get going. Just a heads up that I do use the words college and university interchangeably. And in the United States, they mean the same thing. The difference between a university and a college is that a university has a graduate program, whereas a college only has undergraduate programs. If you're Canadian, the term college will drive you crazy because it means a different type of program. And I understand that, but I'm not Canadian, so just bear with me. And there's a couple things I always want to stress in this process. So there are many, many colleges in the United States. There's more than 2,000 four-year public and private colleges in the United States. And I wish everybody did things the same way. My life would be so much easier. Your life as you're applying to college would be so much easier, but it doesn't work that way. They all do things differently. You'll learn more about that at our next presentation when we talk about filling out your college applications. So just know that oftentimes when I'm asked questions, I have to say it depends on the college. And the other point is, hallelujah, every single one of us is different. We all like different things. There are colleges that appeal to certain students. Other colleges appeal to people. It's like food or music. We all like different things. So please don't get into a comparison with others. I wouldn't even share my college list with people, quite frankly, because you don't need all the noise that happens. Oh, I apply to that school. Well, there's a lot of reasons to apply to a bunch of different schools. And you have to do ultimately what is right for you. It's not where you go, it's what do you do with what's offered where you're at. That's the important thing. So the way the boot camp is working, there's 3 sessions this week. Today is the how to create a balanced college list and why it's so important. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a how to complete your college applications. This will be focusing primarily on the common application. And then Thursday is the how to write a college essay, which is the longer of the 3 sessions. It's a 2-hour session. So in the United States, there are 3 different categories of colleges. And I always want families and students to understand the difference, because the type of college dramatically can change the admissibility for a student, and it can also dramatically change the cost of attending a college. So, all right, I'm going to move my face here, and then this is going to create me to have to go out of my PowerPoint, but that's okay. Okay, so let's go through the 3 different types of colleges in the United States. The first is an in-state public. I'm assuming that everybody here is a resident of Washington. If you're not, just apply this to wherever you are. So in Washington State, we have 6 public four-year universities. We have the University of Washington, Washington State, Western Washington, Eastern Washington, Central Washington, and Evergreen State College. Because you are residents in the state of Washington, you get priority admission to our 6 public universities. And I use the University of Washington often as an example because there's a lot of interest in UW. So at the UW Seattle campus last year, something like 66% of the admitted students were Washington State residents. The other reason why you'll hear families talking about attending in-state public universities is because education is funded through property taxes. And because of all the property taxes that we pay, the tuition is deeply discounted for residents. So the University of Washington and Washington State, I think their tuition's around $12,000 a year. The other 4 are less than that. And while that's not a minimal amount by any means, compared to the other 2 categories, it can seem like quite the bargain. And that's why people, parents, students are really, excited by the thought of attending in-state public universities. And we have wonderful universities in our state. The second category of schools is known as the out-of-state public. So I'm talking about 49 states. And so I have to speak very generically here. But first of all, you have to think about it. You are not a resident in those 49 states, so you've lost the priority admission. You are not a resident, so you're not paying property taxes, so you lose the tuition discount. Generally speaking, out-of-state non-resident tuition is 3 times in-state tuition. And in some states like California, they have a California State college program or university program, and then they have the University of California system. Cal State schools are much less expensive than the University of California. So just looking at tuition, San Diego State, which is a Cal State school, the tuition for non-residents is about $20,000, which again, it's not nothing, but compared to the University of California, San Diego, which is about $47,000 if you're a non-resident. And keep in mind, these are tuition costs, not room and board costs. So that's a huge difference. So when you're thinking about out-of-state schools, and a lot of kids, they want to go out of state, they want to leave the state of Washington. So you have to pay attention to the percentage of out-of-state students that a college admits. So in certain states, Oregon, Arizona, Colorado, Montana, Idaho, New Mexico, Utah, if you've ever driven through there, there's not a lot of people that live in these states. So it's not difficult for out-of-state students to be admitted. Again, colleges are businesses, they're trying to get students. And so if a student is strong academically, there may be scholarship money available, and they'll be like, oh, please come, and awesome. But then there's other states like California and Texas and Florida and Georgia, where there's a lot of people in those states. And for instance, for the University of California system, the University of California system has a mandate that says their total for undergraduate enrollment for undergraduate cannot be greater than 18% of the students can be from outside of the state of California. So that's why it's more difficult. Texas is super protective of their state schools. UT Austin, they limited, I think, to 9% of the students are from outside of the state of Texas. And that's why it can be so difficult to get into some of these schools. Then there's schools like the University of Michigan, which is very hard to get into. However, they accept something like 44% of the students from outside of the state of Michigan. So there's all these different things. So you gotta pay attention to all that. And we'll talk more about the cost of college, but there are some out-of-state schools, as I said, that are generous with scholarship money, And then there are some states, California and Texas certainly are there, where they say, no, we save all of our scholarship money for our residents. We do not give it to non-residents or out-of-state students. And then the third category of schools is the private university, which just simply means that the school isn't funded through property taxes. And sometimes families say, oh, they're too expensive, I'm not even going to consider them. And generally speaking, I'd put them from a cost standpoint pretty close to an out-of-state public. But there are certainly private universities, they know that their competition is the in-state school, and they can be very, very generous. You know, we're talking $35,000 a year in scholarship money, merit scholarship money. So just know, always say, keep an open mind. You know, as you keep doing research, you can decide more. Okay, bear with me because I moved my picture. It is not going to let me move my screen. There we go. Okay, so before you start creating a college list, you have to know your data points, okay? And your data points in the college search are knowing things like, what is your high school cumulative GPA? And you know, I'm doing this program through the Lake Washington Schools Foundation, which is affiliated with the Lake Washington School District. So I'm working with Lake Washington School District info. I realize that some of you might be attending from, you know, the Bellevue School District or Issaquah. So just, you know, apply whatever works for you. But for Lake Washington students, on your Skyward account, there is an unofficial high school transcript, and you should see it. It should be through the end of junior year. And you should know what this number is. Okay, it's like knowing your telephone number. You got to know what your cumulative GPA is. And then rigor classes. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow, but rigor classes are, you know, what's offered at your high school as far as AP classes, honors classes, dual enrollment. You know, like, what have you done? If your school offers 20 and you've taken one, that's fairly light rigor. If you've taken 10, I'd say that's you've taken a pretty rigorous schedule. Just have a sense of where you're at. Standardized test scores. Again, we'll talk more about these tomorrow. These are the ACT and SAT scores. If you're primarily focusing your college search in the West, you really don't need them. Okay, the University of California system, Washington State public universities, including UW, they don't use them. And most of the other colleges are in the West are more like, if you have them, great. If you don't, we don't really care. You know, we will, you know, you'll still go through the process. So, but if you have them, know that you have them. You should kind of have a sense of, are they strong scores? Are they, you know, average scores, you know, whatever. I keep thinking I'm going to take COVID off my slides here, but COVID does still have an impact on things. You know, were you impacted by COVID and remote learning? Again, just know this stuff. And I'm a huge believer in no one is defined by a number. However, the data is important. And what I mean by that is, I don't know, let's say a student has a 3.3 cumulative GPA, which is great. It's a B plus. And the student wants to apply to Stanford. The reality is 99% of students who apply to Stanford all have 4.0 unweighted GPAs. So the odds are, no, well, applying to Stanford for anybody is an extreme reach. It's particularly true for a student with a 3.3. That's not a criticism, it's just a fact. And that's what I work with. I work with data. So, all right. So you kind of know where you're at. And now you want to create a college list. So God bless the internet. There are tons of different search sites that are available, and I've listed them here. Again, I'll be sending out resources afterwards. You know, all you have to do though is type in college search engines and, you know, see what comes up. Personally, I used, if I were to look at what I use the most, I'm not saying it's the only thing I use College Board. I always say it's because I'm an old lady and that's what I'm used to, but I find College Board to be useful. But there's a lot of other ones. Just find one that you like. And then what happens is when you go into the site and you create an account for yourself. There's a bunch of different filters that you are going to be asked about. So again, it's not a situation where, well, any school will do. I mean, you should have thoughts and opinions, and these are things that you can talk about with your parents, and and get a sense for, because again, as I said earlier, we are all different. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit more about acceptance rate, public and private. When you're starting your search, I would probably just keep an open mind and see. You might be surprised what comes up. Cost, again, we're going to talk more about that, but that is a very important conversation to have, parents and children to have together. You would never buy a house without a budget. You would never buy a car. There almost always is a budget for college. Again, size, small, medium, large. A small university or college is 2,000 students or less. Medium is very broad. It's 2,000 to 15,000. And then anything over 15,000 students for undergrad is considered large. And I'm always shocked at how often kids go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I will tell you, it does matter. And that's when we get into things like geographic location. Where do you want to live? Think about the weather. Think about, do you have family nearby? If something happens, how do you know about this area? Urban, suburban, rural. Again, this is an area where, again, you might not know, maybe you've only lived in one kind of place, but I know myself pretty well, and I know I'm better off in a suburban or rural campus because I'm not a city person. Cities agitate me, whereas other people love cities, So then another one to pay attention to is whether or not a college is listed as a commuter school or a residential school. What a commuter campus means is that the majority of the students do not live on campus and they leave at the end of the day. And that doesn't mean they don't have dorms and things like that. However, most students, if they're looking to go away, live away from home for college, are looking for a residential college because, that's the dorms and parties and clubs and all that type of stuff, and you make your new best friends and all that type of thing. So again, doesn't mean you can't have a dorm room on a commuter campus, but on the weekends and once classes are over for the day, the campus might feel very different than it would for a residential. So again, these are just things to think about. College majors, we'll talk more about these today. And you might think, well, I don't know, but let's say you think possibly I want to become a nurse, or possibly I want to become an engineer or something. And if there's possibilities, try to make sure that the school you attend offers that in the event that that's what you decide. Because if they don't, either you have to give up your dream, or you're going to have to transfer schools, which is not the end of the world, but it's disruptive. Again, like things like sports. I have 2 adult children, so I've been through lots of college processes with them. I have one child whose goal was for undergraduate was, if I never attend a sports program at college, I will be so happy. Whereas the other child was, I want to attend a school where I can be a fan in the stands and paint my body. And then as an alumni, I'm still there cheering on. So again, everybody's different in how they feel about things like school spirit and Greek life and stuff. Support programs. If you are somebody who has an IEP or a 504 plan in high school and you need some support services in college, you should make sure that the colleges offer them. Colleges are not required to offer them. Most do, but that should be something that you pay attention to and learn what is offered. You can't really search by liberal or conservative, but you can learn things about schools. And, I don't get into politics at all, but these can raise a lot of, if you're the only liberal student at a very conservative college, or the only conservative student at a very liberal college, you might feel uncomfortable. And again, it depends on you. Again, weather, I laugh when I meet with students and they tell me they want to attend school in the Northeast. And I ask them about their thoughts about weather, and they tell me they hate winter. And it's like, well, again, something to think about because the winters there are very different than what they could be here in the Pacific Northwest. So, and then travel, and this is more for parents. I don't think students think as much about this, but I would pay attention to the ease of your student getting to and from the airport, if that's required for them to attend a college. My daughter attended college in Los Angeles, and her campus was a 10-minute taxi or Uber ride, which made me as a parent very comfortable because I was not going to be taking her to and from college every time she traveled home. And I've had friends whose children have attended schools where it was a 2-hour shuttle or cab, and it was a little more stressful to get their children to and from. So again, just my insight, but I would pay attention to ease of travel and cost of travel too, because travel nowadays is very, very expensive. I often get asked about college rankings. I do not use college rankings at all in my practice. I'm not going to get into them. You can certainly do a search as to why college rankings aren't worth all that much. There's a lot of good factors to pay attention to what makes a good college, and I'll be getting into them. But this partly goes back to, again, my beliefs that we are all different. Everybody responds differently. I'm going to use salmon, eating salmon. My mother-in-law loves a salmon dinner. She will practically pick up her plate and lick it. If you're going to give me salmon, I think it's dog food, and I'm repulsed by it. I do not like it, and it doesn't make me bad and her good, or her good and me bad. Just we are different. So, I tell students sometimes, think about who your best friend is. If you're going to go by rankings is based on popularity, and is your best friend the most popular person at your high school, which might be, the team, the captain of the football team or the cheer captain or whatever. And again, they might be lovely people, but you're like, they're not for me. They're not my personality. I like the quirky kid who's a little nerdy and makes me laugh, type thing. So that's why I don't like college rankings, because don't do it based on these systems which don't work. Do it based on what is right for you. And again, look at the data and I'll show you that, but don't do it based on rankings. So please don't ask me about rankings. And again, I keep stressing the importance of keeping an open mind in this process. And this particularly has to do with liberal arts colleges. So yes, I know we are in a tech area, and I think STEM is important in pretty much any field. But the number of times when I will suggest a liberal arts college for the parent will say, or the student will say, I'm going to become an engineer, I'm going to become a computer scientist, I want to study biology, none of this creative writing stuff. So the term liberal arts, it's an abbreviation. They always forget to say the word liberal arts and sciences. Okay, so the sciences are fully covered in these schools. And again, I have a little chart. I'll go through it in a minute, but there are wonderful liberal arts and sciences universities that are affiliated with a religion. They typically tend to be Jesuit universities, and I'll name some of them. Gonzaga, Seattle U, Loyola Marymount, Santa Clara University. These are just a few of them. Fordham's another one. Georgetown is another one. Boston College is another one. Anyways, students are not required to be Catholic. Students are not required to go to church services. They just embrace social justice, which quite frankly, a lot of students are very much into. And anyway, so just keep an open mind. You might be surprised. Both of our children, when they started their college process, the last place, they both said this to me, I am not attending a Jesuit liberal arts college. And I said, you don't have to, but let's keep an open mind. And then both of them, when they toured the campuses, were like, wow, this is so different than what I had imagined. So keep an open mind. That's all. That's my advice for today. This chart just shows the difference between a liberal arts and sciences college or what's known as like a state university. And the biggest thing has to do with the size. Liberal arts and sciences schools tend to be smaller. The classroom size tends to be smaller. There's more engagement. The classes are taught by professors. There's no teaching assistants who teach the classes and things like that. For students who possibly plan to go to graduate school, liberal arts and sciences universities can be amazing ways to get research opportunities that can be more difficult at a research university. And it's because at research universities, there are graduate schools. Now, liberal arts universities have graduate schools too, but they tend to be law schools and maybe an MBA program, something like that. Whereas at UW, they have graduate programs in physics and chemistry and, name anything. They have a graduate program for it. And graduate students always get priority for research. I'm not saying undergrads can't do research at these schools, but it's a lot more difficult. I always say students have to have very pointy elbows because they need to be aggressive in order to get these. And obviously, there's not, you can have more national name recognition, big time sports, things like that. But they're both great. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I just find that a lot of times people overlook the liberal arts university and what it has to offer. You can study creative writing at the University of Washington, and you can study computer science and mechanical engineering at Gonzaga or Seattle U. So just know, there's something for everybody. And again, just kind of going through here, I'll let you look at this, but one of the interesting things I find about a liberal arts education, and I'm somebody, I attended a liberal arts college, and one of the things that liberal arts schools are known for are the soft skills, leadership, communication, things like that. And we all hear about artificial intelligence and how all of us are going to be replaced, but those are the type of skills that AI can't replace. Okay, they can't replace those soft skills. And so there's just a lot of wonderful opportunities. Okay, my commercial for liberal arts and sciences schools is over with. So one of the things that I see a lot is that when students or parents are creating a college list, the thing that is focused on is acceptance rate. The lower, the better. And again, I'm not dismissing the schools with the very low acceptance rates. They are wonderful universities in their own right, but they're not the only ones who are wonderful universities. And so I am just saying, please, please, please keep an open mind and broaden your list. Do not only look at schools with less than a 10% acceptance rate. And we'll explain why. There's other things to pay attention to. So as I said, I'm a data person. So here I get to show off some of my data. There's more than 2,200 four-year public and private colleges in the United States. 36 of them, this is from this year, 36 of them accept 10% or less of the applicants. And then there are 65 colleges that accept between 10 and 25%. It's a total of 101 universities, which ignores more than 2,000 schools that are amazing and can be amazing for many different factors. So when you're looking, do not just factor on that. And the reason why is schools that have less than a 25% acceptance rate are generally known as highly selective colleges. And what the term highly selective means is that there are too many qualified students applying for too few spots. So I think it's hard for people to conceptualize what a 5% acceptance rate looks like, what a 3% acceptance rate looks like. So here's just some numbers for you. So let's say you're interested in MIT, which last year had a 4.8% acceptance rate. MIT received 29,000 applications and 25,000 of them were rejected. If a student was applying to Brown with its 5% acceptance rate, 51,000 applied, 48,000 rejected. And you can look at these numbers. And it's not because students aren't qualified. Admission officers constantly say, I'm a professional. I attend these type of conferences all the time. And they say, 85, 90% of the students, they're very, very qualified. They have the grades, they have test scores, they have the rigor, all that kind of stuff. We just simply don't have room. So just keep this in mind. If you're only applying to the most selective schools, it's very likely that you will be disappointed. And I'm a resource in the community, and every spring I hear from parents who this has happened to their child, where they only applied to the most selective schools and they did not get into any colleges at all. And how does that make anybody feel? I mean, my gosh, you students, you're amazing. You're working hard. You're achieving so much. So don't do that to yourself. Please do not do that to yourself, because I want to stress, it is not a lottery. It is not a lottery. And I hear that sometimes on Facebook pages, parents, hey, it's just a lottery. I wish it was. I think that would actually be fair, but it's not. This slide, and I haven't updated it in a few years. I just like it for the data part. I probably should update it, but this is just to show, because sometimes parents will be like, I've literally have worked with parents who have said, well, I did not get into Yale 30 years ago. So I expect my child to, they're going to revive the family honor and they're going to get into Yale. Well, okay. So back 30 years ago, Yale had almost a 22% acceptance rate and only had 11,000 applications, okay? And then we go back to 2022, it had gone to a 4.5% acceptance rate and 50,000 applications. So this is not an apples to apples comparison. It has just become a lot more difficult. The Common App, which is a platform that allows students to apply to multiple colleges with one push of the button, basically, schools going test optional or test blind, all these different factors have created this frenzy of everybody wanting to apply to the same schools. And this is a state of college admissions. This is a survey that they do every year of universities. It's a couple hundred schools reply to this. And this is where schools say, in the admission process, the different factors, what is of considerable importance, moderate importance, somewhat importance, and no importance whatsoever. And obviously grades, rigor, strength of curriculum, that's the most important thing. And it truly is, colleges pay a lot of attention to that. But then we look at things like positive character attributes, which we'll talk more about on Thursday when we talk about the essay and how can a student show those positive character attributes. But way down at the bottom are standardized test scores. And, with the pandemic and schools going test blind, test optional, something like 800 schools went in that direction. And everybody chats to me because I hear from parents and students, and they all think that everybody's going back to it. There might be 20 schools that have gone back, MIT, Georgetown, UT Austin, Purdue, more STEM related. Some states like Georgia and Florida, if you're applying to public universities there, students must have test scores. But that's not the norm, okay? That is not the norm. Most schools are still very much test blind or test optional, and truly are test optional. So there is a website called College Data that I like a lot. And every school has a page on College Data. And on the admission tab, there is a scattergram, and this is very small print, and quite frankly, I can't remember what schools. I can't remember what schools these are. Actually, I do. I know the school on the left is University of Washington. I can't think of I don't know what the other one is. I'm embarrassed. But anyways, there's 20 plus factors, okay? And this is where a college will say, this factor is very important, important, considered or not considered. So very similar to the chart I showed earlier, except this is individual versus a collective. So the University of Washington, rigor, GPA, and essay, very important to UW. Whereas, for the other school, who is nameless because I can't think of who it is, the most important thing that they look at is GPA. But there can be things like level of applicants' interest, which is called demonstrated interest. Again, schools like UW, the UCs, they could care less, but other schools care. Some schools care about interviewing, and if a school cares about interviewing, and I was applying there, I would make sure that I get an interview. So this is good information for you to know, to see, okay, well, what's the most important thing that I have? So when you have this list of colleges, you've done a search, you've looked at different things, I suggest making a spreadsheet using Excel or something like that. Have the name, the location, the type, is it in-state, out-of-state, private, the size, the cost, application requirements, and as I said, keep an open mind. And there's a great resource. It's not an expensive resource. It costs maybe $20 on Amazon. Your school, high school, college and career center should certainly have a copy. The public libraries, I'm assuming, have copies probably in the reference section, but it's called the FIS Guide, and it's a great guide. I use it all the time. It is the top 300 schools in the United States. And as I said earlier, there's more than 2,300 four-year public and private. So it's the top universities. And there's a report on each one of the universities. And the reason I like these FIS Guide reports is that they are not marketing pieces. They're not written by college administrators. The reports are based on student surveys. And the students talk about, what's the academic atmosphere like? What are the strong majors? How are the professors? Are they supportive? Is it a game of Survivor there? The social scene, dorm life, what's the surrounding area? What kind of diversity is there on campus? Scholarship, sports, all that type of things. And I tell students, because most likely when you have done this college search, there's going to be schools that come up that you have never heard of. And you might assume, well, this must be a bad school because I've never heard of it. Wrong. There's a lot of wonderful schools that you might not have heard of. So keep an open mind. And if you read the FIS Guide report and it feels good to you, again, I would keep it on my list and continue. But if you read it and you kind of go, this doesn't sound like a place where I would, find my people and be supported and like it, because you should like, this is 4 years of your life. Please enjoy it and learn and have a positive experience. So I highly recommend the FIS Guide. Then what I would do is I would color code my colleges by admissibility. And so green schools, I color schools. This is my system. Other people can have other colors. There's, you do whatever floats your boat. But green schools to me is a match school. And this just simply means based on a student's grades, test scores, if that's an issue. But as I said earlier, in most cases, it's not. Is this a school where I'm comfortable saying to the student, you are likely to be admitted? And I'm going to tell you all right now, I don't care how strong the student is, I never say those words about the University of Washington Seattle campus. I will not tell a student that it is a match, because UW is weird with their admissions, and that's a webinar in its own topic. But anyways, it just means that you're likely to be admitted. Now, sometimes people will say to me, and I will tell you, if you say these words to me, it's like a red flag in front of a bull. I get all agitated. Well, that must mean it's a safety school. Oh, no, it does not. A safety school, in my definition, is a school that admits everybody and no one graduates, or very few people graduate. And there are schools, I will not ever say them, because every time I say them, somebody in the room has attended that school and they're insulted. But that is not a green school, is not a safety school. It just means that, wow, you're likely to be admitted. You're probably likely to get scholarship money and things like that. Those are awesome. Because the reality is 80% of colleges in the United States accept at least half the students who apply. So then a blue school is a maybe. For me, It's between a 25 and 50% acceptance rate. And again, you got to pay attention to if it's an out-of-state school, public school, and the percentage. There's some finagling that goes in. An orange is what I call a reach, and these are schools that have between a 10 and 25% acceptance rate, and then red is an extreme reach, which is less than 10%. Again, it's subjective, but it's important. And please know, I am not saying that if a school is an orange or a red, that a student can't get in. Absolutely not. But you just got to keep things in perspective and know, like, okay, this is a reach school. I better make sure I have some that are not reach schools, because you want to have choices. That's the end game, is having choices. So again, a little game here if we were in person to be more fun, but just look at these. Let's assume we have a 4.0 unweighted GPA student who's had taken lots of rigor classes. Remember, rigor is the AP and the honors or dual enrollment, whatever. Has a 1550 SAT, 99th percentile, and wants to be a computer science, wants to major in computer science. So we got Michigan at 17% acceptance rate, Urbana at 44%, Stanford at 3%, UT Austin at 31%, and USC at 12%. And if we were in person, I'd be saying, okay, what color would you code these? And the reality is they would all be red. They are all extreme reach schools. So I'm a parent, and I know we all like to think our kids are special, and they are to us. But the reality is there are 26,000 public high schools in the United States. There's another 10,000 that are private high schools in the United States. And I know we've got strong high schools and strong achieving students, but we're just one little blip. If you look at a huge map of the United States, we're just one blip. And colleges diversify, can't take all their students from one school and all that. So just keep things in perspective. So when you're creating a college list and you've color coded, these are all sorts of different examples you can have. There's no right or wrong. And just so you know, there is nothing wrong. I have students that I work with where it's that top right one, it's all green. And I say, wow, you're going to get into every single school that you're applying to. Awesome. That's going to be such a fun process for you. You're going to feel so good. But what you don't want is this. Okay. I see this happen. Again, mostly with families I'm not working with, but they reach out to me through the foundation in spring of senior year, and the families are devastated. Okay. They are absolutely devastated. And you should never have a school on your list that, especially with the green ones, that if you know in your heart of hearts that you would never, ever, ever go there, don't apply. You're going to find out tomorrow how much work these college applications are. So going back to the highly selective schools, and again, we have our area is amazing, and it's actually a detriment, quite frankly, where we live in Seattle, because of all the technology companies. We have very smart parents who have very smart children. Okay. And so that's why I tell students, because sometimes students walk in and they're like, yeah, I'm going to be going to UCLA, or I'm going to go to USC, or I'm going to go to Harvard or MIT. And you have to ask her. I always say, please help me understand what it is about you that's going to get you one of those very few spots. And it can't be that you're a 4.0 student with lots of rigor, and it can't be that you have 99 percentile test scores. Yeah, do you need that? Sure. But it's not that alone. So there are some great sources of college data. The two I'm going to be focusing on are the two sites that I use a lot, College Data and College Board. So this is from College Board. This is the University of Washington. This is, just where you can see different information. So again, you can see if, a student has a 3.3 and is applying to UW, only 7% of the admitted students fall into that category. And again, it doesn't mean a student won't get in. I had some wonderful, I had two students this year with a 3.3 and a 3.4 respectively, and they got into UW, which surprised me, but I was thrilled for them. Then there's a breakdown of race and ethnicity. Again, some students care a lot about diversity on campus. Then there's extracurricular activities. Again, you might be somebody who says, man, I need to go to a school that has a basketball team, and that's really important to me, or whatever it is. And then on College Data, you can see There's all sorts of different information, again, about GPA, test scores, recommended classes taken in high school, all sorts of different information. So use these websites for good resources. So I talked about how it bothers me when families only focus on the acceptance rate of a college, because the acceptance rate is the input, okay? And I think what's more important, especially when you think about all the money that is spent attending college, is on the output, okay? What happens when a student is done attending that school. So if I don't look at acceptance rate to determine if a college is good, because let's face it, nobody wants to go to a bad college. And I don't want to give any, suggest a bad college to anybody. So again, I look at data. So first of all, what is the four-year graduation rate? Okay, and all this information is available. It's available on different websites. Colleges have the information available. But a four-year graduation rate to me was always important with my own children, because I assumed, and I was correct, at least with my kids, that if most students get out in 4 years, my kids were likely to get out in 4 years. And that was important to me for a variety of reasons, not least of all, the high cost of college, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So my rule of thumb is a 50% four-year graduation rate. And you might think, really? That's all you're looking for? You'd be surprised. That's not, it's not as easy as you might think to find that. So in the United States, the majority, 56% of students graduate within 6 years of starting college. So 50% in 4 years is actually a really good number. Now, if you see a school and the number is below 50%, there can be very good reasons why. And the best reason, in my opinion, is a school that has what's known as a co-op program. And some of the schools that have these would be Northeastern University, University of Cincinnati, Georgetown, Purdue, Oregon State, Rochester Institute of Technology. Students are required, as part of their graduation requirement, to work in their field, typically for at least 2 semesters. You're not paying tuition during that time, and students are earning money, and typically good money, during this time. But you can't graduate in 4 years because you can't get through the classes, okay? To me, especially in today's job market, that is an amazing thing. To get that real world experience, because in a lot of cases, if the student does a good job on their co-op, that company will likely hire the student when they graduate. So never be afraid to ask, why is your 4-year graduation rate low? It could be because we have a lot of transfer students. Students start out here and then they transfer elsewhere, or students can't get their graduation, the classes they need for graduation with, sometimes it's hard to get classes, and maybe it takes 4 years and 2 quarters or something. So ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask. The retention rate is the percentage of freshmen who come back for sophomore year. So again, my rule of thumb, although this is kind of low, is 80%. Quite frankly, if I saw a school at 80%, my alarm button would go off, because I'd want to know what was going on. But I'd like to see high 80s or in the 90s percent. That means kids are happy and they're coming back for the next year. Specific programs, as I said, no one has to know what they're going to major in necessarily, and it depends on the college. But if you think you might want to study XYZ, business or computer science or data science or physics or whatever, make sure that a school offers it. Does the cost work? We're going to talk more about cost in a minute, because cost is important. Please don't be that person who goes, I'm just going to take out student loan debt. Do a search. There's a lot of chatter about student loan debt and all the horrors of it. Please stay within your budget as much as you can. And then, does the culture of the school? Colleges, universities are just like people. They have vibes, they have culture. And I don't know about you, there are some people I would not want to spend 4 years with, because it's not a fit for me with my personality. And I'm sure there's people who meet me that think, oh my gosh, I wouldn't want to spend 4 years with her either. But anyways, that's why it's important to go in person and sniff and smell and taste and see what it's all about, but really get a sense, is it a good fit? Are you going to be supported and find your friends and your people and all that? So as I said, don't get hung up on acceptance rate. And this is just a chart I've put together. So you can see, NYU there's at the top with a great four-year graduation rate of 12%, which makes it, a reach school for everybody. But then we have Santa Clara University, again, one of those liberal arts and sciences colleges that I talked about, which has an outstanding computer science and engineering and business school that has an 83%, or sorry, 85% four-year graduation rate with a 52% acceptance rate. And then you've got Michigan, again, they're great schools, but it only has a 17% acceptance rate. And remember, it's an out-of-state public, and 44% of that number are from outside of the state of Michigan, which is why it becomes a reach school, because it's less than 10%. And then you've got Gonzaga at 80% with a 69% acceptance rate. And Gonzaga is one of those private universities that they know they're competing against UW and places like that. And if the student is strong, they will give $30,000 a year, and they've got strong computer science, data science, biomedical, the different engineering, and spend a lot of money in those areas. So please do not get hung up on acceptance rate. Okay, there is an association called the Association of American Universities. There's 63 of these, and these are leading edge universities and research. Okay, you can read the slide there. And I get it. A lot of people really want to be on the cutting edge. Okay, and so I'm going to show you the chart. And obviously, you can look at this and say, oh yeah, I see, NYU and Yale and Vanderbilt and UCLA and Duke, Stanford, all those schools. But then there's ones like University of Minnesota and Mizzou and Purdue and UPenn, or not UPenn, not UPenn selective, Penn State and Arizona, University of Arizona, Indiana University, Ohio State, University of Oregon. These are schools that most students can get admitted to, okay? And a lot of them will give strong scholarship money, and they are in the same league. Okay, so if you're looking for the research schools, again, go ahead, apply to a few reaches. I'm not saying you can't, but please have a balanced list. There's wonderful, wonderful schools out of there. And another thing to look at for students who are more, higher achieving students who say, but I want to be, I want to be with the smart kids and all that. So a lot of the public universities and private universities too, they have honors programs or honors colleges. Okay. And investigate them. There can be all sorts of benefits. I would find out what the advantage is. And you have to do some research on this. For example, my daughter attended Loyola Marymount University, which is in Los Angeles, and she got into their honors college, and it was wonderful. There were a lot of opportunities for her there that were a blessing for her, and she's done very well with her life. But one of the most wonderful advantages of her being in this honors program was the fact that she could never be told that a class was full. So, when you're trying to get your graduation requirements, for your major and things like that, to not ever be out of a class, to be told that you can always get in, that was wonderful. There were also wonderful opportunities for research funding. There was also, they would do this etiquette dinner that was required because a lot of their honor students would go on to apply for Rhodes Scholars and other, post-graduation scholarships. And the final cut for a lot of these is a dinner, and how a student behaves if they know how to use the right fork and how to speak to people, and they would force the students to go through these and all that. So Arizona State's a great example. It's a school where their mission is to admit as many students as possible, and they've got wonderful programs. But one of their wonderful programs is the Barrett Honors College, which is a school of 9,000 students. It's got its own housing and dining room and special classes and all that. So keep an open mind and find out. You might be surprised at what you learn. I'm a big listener of podcasts. These are books too, but I have a hard time reading nonfiction. I get tired or something, but I can listen to them. And these are two that I listened to while I was out walking my dogs and gardening and things. Who Gets In and Why is about admissions. And this book actually covers the University of Washington's admission process, which is fascinating to read about. And then Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be. And it's all about how the wonderful opportunities, and they give a lot of personal stories about people who've done very well in their lives. And it's not because they went to a highly selective school, it's what they did where they were at and all that. So I think these are great to listen to as a family if you've got a road trip coming, or maybe once a week, listen to it for an hour together. There's also another podcast that I've discovered this year that I like. It's called the College Admissions Process Podcast. And it's you can go online and there's a directory, and what they speak to admissions officers at specific universities. So if you're like, oh, I'm interested in UPenn, or I'm interested in Purdue, I'm interested in Carnegie Mellon, University of Florida, whatever. And they interview the admissions people, and you can learn a lot about the different universities. I find them very interesting. I might be weird, but I find them interesting. So I apologize because we're at 1 o'clock here, and it's going to go a little bit longer. But another important part of College Fit is affordability. Okay. As I said, this is not anything that people should not pay attention to. So in the United States, 0.1% of US students receive a full ride scholarship. Full ride means everything is covered, tuition, room and board, et cetera. And that might be startling to hear, because I think oftentimes families think, oh, well, my student's been doing very well and they're going to get a full ride. It doesn't happen very often, as you can see, 0.1. 1.5% of US students receive a full tuition scholarship. Okay, that's the tuition part. 7% of high school athletes play a varsity sport in college. 2% will play in the Division I, and only 2% of high school students will receive athletic scholarships. So these are just things to keep in mind, that the money may not be there as a family might think. So the US system was designed where parents are expected to pay for college. This doesn't mean, students, that you can say to your mom and dad, hey, that lady said you got to pay for my college. No, I'm just saying that they don't, in the US, the government doesn't subsidize the cost of college. If you're a Canadian citizen, you have dual citizen, in Canada, the government subsidizes the cost of college, but in the US, it does not. So parents need to think about their willingness to pay, not just their ability to pay. And it's, quite frankly, I'm shocked at the number of families who don't think about cost when they're creating a college list, because this is really, really important. Again, there's more than tuition. There can be room and board and books and travel costs and all that. There's two types of aid, scholarship money: merit-based and need-based aid. For need-based aid, your best source of information is to talk to the financial planning or financial aid office of a college. Merit aid, which we'll talk about in a minute, is different. And I often get questions from families who are looking for money for college, which, again, I understand, because college is very, very expensive. Merit aid, which is given by the university, is the greatest source of scholarship money. So if budget is an issue, and I'm here to tell you it almost always is, even if I know parents don't like to talk about that with their students, with their children, but it's an important factor. Anyway, so colleges that give merit-based, that are generous with merit-based money, is your best source, best source of scholarship money. And so really have an honest conversation, set expectations, do your homework. And this slide, again, this was updated for this year. This shows the annual cost of college. Okay, so you have to times this by 4, hopefully not by 5 or 6. But this is why the graduation rate is so important, because again, if you're UW, you're looking at 120,000 roughly for 4 years. It's just expensive. So you can look at that. And then there's a category of schools called WUE schools, which are the Western Undergraduate Exchange. And you can see the website there. If you just type in WUE, W-U-E on your search engine, the site will pop up. But what WUE is, there's 14 states, Washington is one of them, where they made agreements. I mentioned earlier that out-of-state non-resident pay 3 times in-state tuition. WUE pricing is 1.5 times, so it's a huge cost savings. So it's a huge scholarship. And again, it depends on the college. Unfortunately, it is not all the public universities. The only UC, University of California system school that is a WUE is Merced. Oregon State is one, Colorado State. There's a number of wonderful schools, University of Hawaii, things like that. And every school is different as far as GPA requirements. Some are more selective than others. Sometimes certain majors might not be covered, but if you're looking to go out of state, WUE can be a good source. So there's different types of money in college, and I love the ones that aren't paid back, and that would be grants, scholarships, merit scholarships, and work study, and any sort of loan that they will have to be paid back. Just know that. And there's something called FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. I got my fingers crossed that for the class of 25, that they have the bugs worked out, because the class of 24 really suffered. They made a lot of changes and it was a disaster. But this is the form that families fill out for need-based aid. And it's completed in a student's senior year, and Find Your Fit, usually I bring in an outside expert, because I am not a financial planning college counselor, but I try my best to bring in experts who can talk about things. So let's talk a little bit more about merit scholarships. What a merit scholarship is: a tuition discount to attract a student. Okay, it is usually based on a student's grades, sometimes test scores. Students do not apply for them. They are simply given, typically, not always, but typically a student will hear when they receive their admission notice that, oh, congratulations, you've been admitted, and we're going to give you $10,000 a year for the next 4 years, or 15,000 or 20,000 or 25,000 or 30,000. Like I said, there are some very generous schools. You don't repay them. And one of the things you want to make sure of is that they are for 4 years of college. And how do you find out if a school offers merit aid? College Board can show some information. A school's website is a good source. You can, in the search engine, type in merit aid. If it is an out-of-state public university, like a Cal State, University of Michigan, University of Florida, Florida State, whatever, type in the words non-resident merit aid. You can also reach out to admissions and say, hey, I'm curious, these are my data points. If I was admitted, would I likely get any money? Unfortunately, the more selective schools do not give merit aid. They can give need-based aid, but they typically don't give merit aid, because, as I said earlier, a merit aid is a tuition discount to attract students. And most of the highly selective schools do not need to do that. College majors, let's talk a little bit about that. So high school students who are here, seniors, you are 17, maybe you're 18 years old. The reality is your brain, the frontal lobe of your brain, is not formed. It's not a criticism. It's just the reality. And so I really hate that there's all this pressure on students to have their life figured out and know what they want to major in. And I'll be the first to tell you, college majors and careers are not one and the same, and most adults will tell you the same thing. However, many colleges do ask students to select majors on their college application. So there's different ways. Again, it depends on the college. There are direct admit majors. University of Washington, computer science, and the engineering schools, those are two examples. Other colleges, you can say, yeah, I'm kind of interested in business. And they're like, great, you're pre-business. And then by the end of your sophomore year, you'll make a decision. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I'm undecided. I can't pick a major. Again, some colleges will let you do that, others won't. University of Washington does not offer undecided as a choice anymore. They used to, but they don't now. So a question I would ask a school, if you are undecided, I would reach out to admissions or do some research on their website and say, if I'm undecided, how will you help me? What is your process to help a student figure things out? Because again, you want to go someplace where there's a plan in place, because you want to get out in 4 years if you can. You might want to ask, how hard is it to change majors? Sometimes students, especially if they're into computer science, they think, well, I'll go in and I'll say I'm an English major, and then I'll switch. And then they find out that it can be next to impossible. Again, it depends on the college. Can you design your own major? But make sure you do your research on this. And I'm just going to be going through this, but computer science has become very, very popular with many students. And I'm just showing these. I just want you to see how difficult because these are schools that admit directly into the major. And you can see, Carnegie Mellon, 5%, Berkeley, 1.9%, Urbana, 7.5%, UT Austin, 6%. It makes UW with 25% for residents. It's much harder to get into the computer science program at UW if you're not a resident. So just pay that in mind. And these are just some examples of some other strong computer science programs that students can get into. Colorado State's a WUI school, so is Oregon State. And then thinking beyond computer science, these are some different majors: informatics, robotics, data science, statistics, machine learning. And I'm running out of time here, I apologize, but same thing for engineering. Again, these are great programs, but you know what? These are great engineering programs too, and look into them. And then if you're interested in a pre-professional program, what pre-professional means that you plan to go to graduate school after you complete your 4 years of undergrad. So this could be, you want to become a doctor, so you go to medical school. You want to become a lawyer, so you go to law school. You want to get your master's in public health. You want to become a physical therapist, so you get your doctorate in physical therapy. So just know that if you have a good sense of that already, I would look into the advising programs that a college has. I would find out where students who are going to medical school or law school or master's in public health, or whatever it is, where are their students being admitted to? What percentage of students? Just again, because you guys know I like data. To give you an example, for medical school, 47% of all the college freshmen who say, I'm going to become a doctor and I'm going to go to medical school, only 47% of them actually end up taking the MCAT exam, which is the test students have to take in order to be qualified to go to medical school. And of the 47% who take the MCAT, only 40% of those actually get into medical school. So this is information where you're going to have to meet with people. It's hard to find it on the website, because on a school website, they make it sound like everybody, 100% of our students get into follow their dreams. Not true. So you'll have to do some research on that. How do you explore careers? What interests you? What are you curious about? Please talk to people. If you're interested in engineering or becoming a nurse or becoming a teacher, whatever it is, talk to people, talk to adults who work in those fields. Parents, this is an area you can help your child with. And most adults are more than happy to talk to teens who are interested. See if you can do some job shadowing. The WANIC, the Washington Network of Innovative Careers, they have full year courses, they have summer courses. They're wonderful. Great way to explore careers. Doing internships. how can a student know that they want to become an engineer if they've never done anything? And I say this from personal experience because my son didn't know what he wanted to study, and his dad and I both said, wow, you're great at math and science, become an engineer. And he's like, oh great, I'll become an engineer, because why not? And he knew within 2 weeks that that was not the field for him. Nothing against engineers, but it wasn't the right fit for him. So pay attention. I always stress the importance of visiting colleges. So many families will say, we're going to wait until we know where we've been admitted. I don't recommend that at all. Okay. I'm not saying that you need to interview every single school or visit in person every single school you're applying to, but you should visit some. If you didn't do it over the summer, you still have fall. Fall's a great time to visit colleges because many colleges have fall preview days. It's okay to take a day off school and, or, work with other families who are going to go visit. Maybe your kid can tag along. It takes time and effort and costs some money. I realize it, but it is so important because it can demystify what it means to go to college. Students have no clue. It can motivate a student. It's a good way to demonstrate interest for colleges who care about it. It can help a student understand what is the right fit for them. As I said, both of my own children said, I'm never going to a liberal arts college. That sounds horrible, until they actually saw it and they're like, wow, so different than what I imagined. And then it can create discussion points between a student and a parent. As parents, you might be realizing that part of what a student does, a teenager has to do, they have to separate from their parents. And so it can be nice to have a discussion point. And as I said, some colleges care about demonstrated interest. That was on that college data admissions factors that I showed you. Some colleges care about a student's interest. And how do you do it? You can tour schools. In the fall, a lot of colleges come and visit our high schools. Students, you should pay attention. And if schools are coming in that you might be interested in, go attend their sessions. Again, keep that open mind. College fairs, there's always a fall college fair. You can email admissions, you can open emails, they track all of that. You can follow on social media. Again, they track all of these things. Almost done here. A question I always ask students when I'm working with them on a college list is just asking a student, how much rejection can you handle? And again, everybody's different. If I was applying to 10 schools and I got 3 rejections, that would be my max. If I got 4 or more, I'd feel bad about myself. Some kids can take 9 out of 10. Some kids can't take more than 1, but have an honest conversation with yourself. And then finally, as you're finalizing your college list, just know there's no magic number. I'm asked that all the time. The important thing is that it's balanced. You can reach out to departments. You can read the FIS guide reports if it's available. Again, it's not an expensive resource. It's about $21, $22 on FIS guide. Maybe go in with another family, look at the data, talk to students, man, talk to students and ask them their opinions. Does it fit within the family budget? Do they have the programs that you might be interested in? How's the culture? Does it fit your personality? And keep in mind, there is no perfect school. There is absolutely not a perfect school. And ideally, I'm saying you should have your list finalized by early September, which I realize is less than 3 weeks away. That might not be possible. But the reason is, you'll find out more tomorrow, but many colleges application deadlines are November. And that's why I would encourage you to try to get this done as soon as you can. So I'm sorry that this went a little bit over. I'm available to answer any questions that you might have. If you don't, no worries. There will be resources sent out with the recordings. I don't send them out. The foundation does it, and they're very busy with the start of the school year. So it would probably be next week. And then tomorrow's session is on how to complete your college applications. Again, I'll primarily be focusing on the Common App, which many schools use, including the University of Washington. I am a resource in the community. You can always email me at findyourfit@lwsf.org, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Follow the foundation or Find Your Fit on social media, because I'll be doing essay review sessions and things like that to help families. So Thank you for your time today. And if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.